Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Sports. I am Ralph Labella.
And I'm Ron Sen. Well, when I grew up in Wakefield, it used to be Melrose. And now sometimes we thought it was Loserville. 45 years without a state championship. But the drought is over after the girls volleyball team captured their first state championship and Melrose's first state championship in any sport in the last 45 years.
Yeah, the girls had a tremendous run this year, Ron. I told you before the season started, after last year's state final match against Marlboro, that they were going to be the top team in the state. And I think my prediction came through. I know some people might say Barnstable, some people say Melrose. But I think Melrose should be rated the #1 team. And my tiebreaker is who won the last match. Melrose beat Barnstable the last time they played them. So, again, the argument's Melrose, Barnstable, and the way Melrose played against Canton and in the state final, you have to say they're right up there with Barnstable.
Right. In a way, the match against Longmeadow was anticlimactic in that the real tough match was against Canton, a very talented team. Not to say that Longmeadow wasn't. Having seen the game several times on replay, I think that Longmeadow's defense was extremely good, but they didn't quite have the offense that some of the other teams had. Now, you think about the accomplishments this team had. They're the first Melrose team to win a state championship. They won the Division II North Sectional Championship 4 consecutive years. That didn't mean they showed up 4 consecutive years. They won 4 consecutive years. They set the school record for most wins this year with 26. They had 2 all-state players in Brooke Bell and Sarah McGowan, who are also all-scholastics for the Boston Globe. And they had 7 Middlesex League All-Stars, Bell and McGowan, let's see, Amanda Comito, Joe McGinnis, Rachel Johnson,
Kayla
Weiland, and I'm leaving somebody out. No, it wasn't Allie. Oh, Jen Kane, of course.
Jen Kane, yeah.
So, you know, when you say out of 9 players, how much talent did you have? They had 7 of their own players named all-league. So, terrific team, outstanding coaching by Coach Celli and Coach Wall and Coach Bastieri. So, you really can't ask for more from a team. And about the only thing, which almost sounds silly, is that sometimes they were so much better than most of the teams they played, it looked like they got bored occasionally.
Yeah, well, Coach Celli sets up a great out-of-league, schedule. Playing teams like Westboro during the year, Central Catholic during the year, Bishop Fenwick, Arlington Catholic, and then Newton North. Playing teams like that, I mean, they definitely got them ready for the finals. But I knew after the Westboro match that they were going to win it. I mean, you could see it in the girls' eyes. Before the match, when the JV team was playing, I walked by them when I was talking to some of the girls. They were so confident. Usually you get a little nervous before a match. They were so confident, joking around, because they could rely on each other on. Not only did they rely on themselves, have that confidence, but they knew they had the teammates to win it. And that's what they did. Against Westboro, they just dominated that match. In every big match after that, they played their best volleyball.
Well, they've always played their best in the big matches. And if you look back on the season, in 84 sets, they won 80. They lost 3 to Newton North and 1 to Longmeadow. And after their first set win against Longmeadow, I think they maybe let up a little bit because they thought they were that much superior to Longmeadow. Longmeadow, to their credit, fought back, provided a worthy opposition in that set, and were able to win the second set 26-24. But after that, it was pretty much lights out as Melrose shut the door on them.
Well, yes, when you go by, like you said, the semifinal game against Canton, much stronger team, but Melrose just totally dominated them right from the beginning. Melrose got the momentum. They were just too strong for Canton, and Canton wilted as the match went on. Longmeadow match, Longmeadow came out and Melrose dominated them in the first set. Longmeadow couldn't do anything right. Second set, Longmeadow got it going, and they got the confidence. They got the momentum big time. And it took Melrose a while to get that momentum back. It was more workmanlike for Melrose in that Longmeadow match. They were battling for every point. I mean, balls they thought were going out of bounds didn't go out of bounds. Missed hits by Longmeadow were going in as winners. I mean, things just weren't going right for Melrose. They couldn't get into that rhythm that they normally get in. But the thing that impressed me more in that match, in the Canton match, everything was going against them for a while. But they continued to battle, continue to make great plays. I watched the back row making some great bumps to Brooke Bell, and Brooke Bell setting everybody up at the net. And the front line was playing excellent too at times. But they still, Long Meadow kept that momentum. They kept that confidence right through the second and third set. Even though Melrose fairly dominated in the third set, Melrose did not get into that rhythm that they normally get into. At the end of the third set, you could see them starting to take over, and they just wore down Long Meadow. And that fourth set, they were the Melrose team that we were used to. But I really enjoyed that better, to see Melrose go through that where things weren't going right. That shows what type of team they are. A great team could only handle those situations.
Right. Bill Belichick talks about complementary football, offense, defense, special teams. And I think about volleyball that way. They had superior front row blocking. As a pair, Rachel Johnson and Kayla Weiland were superb. Probably the best blocking pair Melrose ever had. They had Sarah McGowan, who's outstanding blocking as well. That makes the back row's job doable when some of those smashes are tipped, so they're slowed down so you can handle. You don't have to constantly be bombarded. And the back row, which included numerous players from Amanda Comito to Jill McGinnis, Allie Nolan, Jen Kane, Annalisa DeBarry. Cassidy Barbaro, who was outstanding in the serving role. All of them were able to make good passes to Brooke up in an area where she could set the front. So the front row blocking, back row digging, as it were, to make that first pass to Brooke, and her setting to good hitters really was outstanding, and it really made all the difference. It was clearly the best overall teamwork any Melrose team had.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think they had so much confidence, and they really enjoyed this run. I mean, you could just see it in their eyes. I mean, they just really enjoyed, playing amongst each other. But like we talked before, the back row made it easier for the front row. The back row made it easier for Brooke. Brooke made it easier for the front row. The front row made it easier for the back row. I mean, it was unbelievable the way that team came together.
Right, and also they had players who were getting better even to the final day. You had players like Kayla Weiland, who really progressed over the course of the season, and I'm sure will play in college. And Rachel Johnson played her absolute best volleyball of her life in the state semifinal and state final. She had 12 kills in the final. I think she had double digits in the semifinal. She was really the key factor in the second set against Canton, and really outstanding job by not only an outstanding volleyball player, but an outstanding student.
Yeah, I mean, and look at Jill McGinnis, how she came. I mean, you talked about Amanda, you talked about that whole back row. Allie Nolan, a sophomore, playing steady in the back row. I mean, they all just did a great job.
It got to the point where you're watching the team play, and if somebody hits a shank ball, it goes off their bump and slices off, you just say, like, wow, that hardly ever happens. And the players worked very hard, many of them playing all season long. They earned the coach's confidence. And, I firmly believe that Melrose's reserve players are probably the third best team in the league after Melrose and Reading.
Right, that's what you have to say. The reserves made them a better team.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
they practice against them every day. Coach Kelly told me, they're getting so much work. The first team is playing against the second teamers. And that made them, I mean, they're as big a part of the team as the starters were. It's great when every time they get in, they played strong. But there's one player. I mean, you have Brooke Bell and Sarah McGowan, two of the top players in the state. You have 7 All-Stars. But you got to say something about Jen Kane. I mean, Jen Kane was a special player. I mean, I'm not going to go overboard and saying this or that, but she was a special player. I mean, she should be recognized for that, because she was as good as the back row was, and they were all very good. Jen Kane was the best. She was the best. As far as I'm concerned, she got it to Brooke just about every time where Brooke wanted it. And she was just so good, so solid. In the front row, she was one of the top. Next to Sarah, she was one of the top. You could argue she was the second best, third, whatever. And she was probably the best server on the team.
Well, the other thing that's a little different with this team than some of the other teams is I bet that if you measured the collective jumping ability of this team versus the other Melrose volleyball teams, now some of them had taller players, but who might be able to have a longer reach just because they were taller, but you have girls, Annalisa DeBarry, Jen Kane, Sarah McGowan, Rachel, Kayla. Look at the photos on the blog. These girls could all jump. you know, or they learned how to jump, they chose to jump, they worked on jumping. It makes a difference.
You know what I was thinking about the other day when we were practicing basketball and we saw the high school team up there? I was saying, imagine if Sarah McGowan played basketball when she was a kid. I mean, her athletic ability, it's unbelievable, and she's vicious. She would be so aggressive in basketball, but, you know, she's a great tennis player.
Well, right. I think you watch the players during the celebration, how excited they were, and it's great to just be able to witness that, see kids having fun, getting rewarded for their hard work over the course of many years, as well as what that will mean for the next generation of players. There are probably girls in 3rd or 4th grade who saw the games during the season and say, wow, I want to be able to do that when I grow up.
And you know the funny thing, too, is you see Brooke Bell. We know how much fun she had with me coaching her. But I remember her from the 3rd grade when we were coaching Tegan, her sister Tegan, and she used to come down to the practices and the games. And you knew she was a great athlete, and look what happens. MVP of the league, on the state championship team, one of the big leaders in the team. It's just great to see.
And the coaches deserve credit not only for developing the players, but first of all, they recruit the players. They find athletic kids when they're young. They attract them to come to the camp. They maintain interest. You cannot show up for volleyball when you're a freshman and make the team.
Not anymore.
You know, you have to have playing experience. And what's not to love about the game? The kids have fun. They have this game where I think they call it Queen of the Court, where they have 3-on-3, that one group of 3 plays against the next group. If you win the point, you stay out there. Then the next group of 3 comes on. And Coach Shelley was saying the kids could play this all day long. They never get tired of it.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, the past shows we've had, and I've come out and said, when I've been a little upset, that Coach Shelley's the best coach in the state, I believe, from what he's done with this program. And people must probably watching the show, and he's just saying it. Well, look what he's done. I mean, Coach Shelley and Coach Wall, I mean, they've been absolutely amazing. And look what they've done. You know, I can personally tell you that kids have come out of his program so much more confident, you know, so happy that they went through that. I mean, I've seen it. I don't want to get too much into it with my daughter, but I mean, her experience playing for Coach Shelley and Wall was unbelievable. Her best experience in high school. It's as simple as that.
Well, the team went 92-8 over 4 years. I think they only lost 1 game in 4 years on the road, so they were really tough on the road, not on neutral sites in the playoffs. And they did everything you can possibly do as a high school team. I mean, you can't ask for more than winning a state championship. Now, a separate question, which I think is relevant, is it's been 45 years since a Melrose team won a state championship in anything. How does that happen? Now, Watertown's won, you know, people say, well, Watertown, they don't win in anything. Well, except in field hockey, they must have won 15 state championships. Now, it's not like field hockey is the national sport of the United States, but they have something there that really works. Stoneham has won in boys and girls soccer. They've won in basketball, in boys basketball in the past. They've won a state championship in baseball. There may be some other things they've won state championships, I don't know. But, you know, something in the community, the youth program, the coaching, something is successful. Wakefield's won in boys and girls basketball. They've won state championships, at least 2 in soccer. So this is just, these are the schools off the top of my head that I can name.
Well, right, but we've had some real bad breaks in
Sure.
basketball. When your daughters played, they should have won it twice, the states. When they played, when our daughters played together, they should have won it. They lost it by a thumb hitting the net. When they would have went up 29-26 in that 4th set to win it against Marlboro. I mean, they've had bad breaks. Look at with Shea Petty gets the concussion. They would have won the states that year. Then when the next year they go up against Lincoln Sudbury with Swords. You know,
Right.
Lincoln Sudbury should have been in Division I. They ended up beating us when Shea got in foul trouble. It was a 3-point game when she sat out, and then Lincoln Sudbury again wins the states. So we've had some tough luck over the years in both basketball and volleyball. But look, I mean, it's all changed this year.
Right. As a group, you know, you know, whatever it is, the Dalton Trophy or however the all sports competition record is, Melrose hasn't fared very well in the big picture. Now, I understand there's only so many athletes to go around, but you want the kids to be able to enjoy sport and success no matter what sport they're playing. And certainly there are a lot of active youth programs. There are hundreds of kids playing soccer around town. And so you'd say, well, you'd expect these kids to be really successful. Now, I understand. You've got other communities that their children are also working very hard, getting good coaching, and maybe the flagship program in their community, like Winchester Soccer or Lexington Basketball, whatever. But just something worth thinking about.
Yeah, and you look at our football team this year, had a great year, but they lost by 2 points to Burlington. They would have went to the playoffs.
Talk about the Thanksgiving game. You got to see it.
It was a great game. I mean, it was just a great football game. Number one, Melrose is a solid team. They have a number of real good football players. To me, Anderson's close to being a great high school football player, real. I mean, they just had it all. You look at the defensive line. They had 4 seniors on that defensive line. And they had Federico at defensive end. They had Trider at the other defensive end. They were moving them both at the beginning of the year. They moved Trider to the strong side, but Federico improved so much they just left them on each side. You have Ferreira in there. You had McCormick and Squazzero, the interior defensive line. You had 2 great junior middle linebackers in DeRafael and Mercer. You had Corrales and Griffin and outside linebackers, they're seniors. And you had 2 great cornerbacks in McKinley and Anderson with Campbell at free safety, 3 seniors. I mean, they just had a great defensive team. You could not run against Melrose. The only player that ran against Melrose is Cruz of Burlington. And if Melrose played him at the end of the year, he wouldn't have run against them either. Melrose, they just kept getting better and better and better. And then they had that great offensive line. Again, all seniors. They had Gelati, Trider, McCormick as the center. They had Steele, Ferreira inside at tackle. And they moved Griffin down to play tight end, sometimes Federico. Campbell had a great year at end. The combination with him and Real was unbelievable. Mercer and DeRafael at fullback leading Anderson. It was just and then Foley kicking came on. He's a junior, got better and better as the year went on. It was just a talented team. They didn't have one weak player. Sometimes you have to cover up. They didn't have one weak player.
Yeah, I was really impressed by the way they held Wakefield's passing game down. As Wakefield quarterback Mike Miller had 22 touchdown passes this season, but Melrose got enough pressure on him and apparently adjusted their defensive scheme.
Did you see the game on TV at all?
I've seen parts of it.
Well, they came out. Melrose had an unbelievable game plan. They had Mercer and DeRafael early on blitzing right up the middle. With the pressure Federico was getting on them from the outside and Trider, and then you had Squazzero and Ferreira getting pressure up the middle with McCormick. But Mercer was getting in there every time when they blitzed. The one thing I said during the game is I said Wakefield's going to make an adjustment at halftime because when Melrose blitzes, they're showing the blitz with DeRafael and Mercer. They're going to go with a slant pattern across the middle. And early on in the second half, they did that when they both blitzed. But that was the last time Melrose blitzed 2. They would blitz 1 after that up the middle. But he was was it Miller the quarterback?
Miller.
Miller was so uncomfortable the whole game. I mean, the game plan was just unbelievable. And the thing we always worried about, not putting the cover 2s in there. Once in a while they did, but not too often. Miller didn't have any time to throw. Every time there was someone in his face, he'd have to roll out every time. But Merrill's game plan, they knew that when just one person getting near him, he'd always roll to his right. So they knew that, and Federico was all over him the whole game.
Yeah, I don't know how much statistical analysis high school coaches can do. They have limited time. They only have a limited number of films that they're going to get. But for example, they were talking about the Patriots against the Dolphins this weekend, that the Dolphins blitz five or more rushers 40% of the time, and the Patriots only blitz that much 8% of the time. And they said that if you don't rush too many players against Tannehill and drop back into coverage, that he tends to really not be able to find open receivers. But if you blitz him, that's when he's most effective. I guess he can just find the receivers quickly.
Well, I would blitz him anyway. I wouldn't care what they said because you want to make him uncomfortable. A young guy, you don't want him standing back in the pocket. Unless, I don't know if the Patriots are smart enough to disguise that defense back there now. I mean, they've got young players back there too, with Denard back there. I mean...
well, we'll get to the Patriots soon.
Yeah.
We'll be right back with our next segment.
All in the end. We're the Melrose Volleyball team, 2012 state champions.
And you're watching
Let's Talk Sports!
Good evening. Violence in sports. I don't just mean violent collisions. I don't just mean when you take Baltimore Ravens safety Ed Reed, who might decide to launch off of his feet and go helmet first into somebody. Well, that's the way safeties used to play the game. But I digress. We're not talking so much about that tonight. You know, we're talking about the culture of violence itself that is inside sports. How about when you say Ed Reed goes helmet to helmet with some poor defensive player that ends up off his feet and onto the ground, and next thing you know, he's out of the game on a stretcher. And then Ed Reed just kind of jogs back to the sideline. Because that's it, right? Well, you know, it's kind of funny, but when the same thing happens in basketball, like, for instance, Rondo with the Celtics decides to get himself kicked out of the game because he decides he's going to go stand up for his bigger teammates, which I found funny, the smallest guy on the team. We're not going to take that. We're not going to take that from anybody. Well, you know what, folks? That mentality is great, but it doesn't always work that way. Because guess what? They got Rondo out of the game, and the Celtics are not as good a team without him. So I would say the blueprint to beat the Celtics is to just go and aggravate Rondo. Because guess what? Maybe he'll push you into the stands too and land on a fan. But you know what? That's the difference. Basketball, a guy like Rondo's looking at 10 games. Ed Reed, he just successfully made off with not having to take a one-game suspension, and he's paying $50,000, which is a drop in the bucket to those guys. It's a parking ticket, as they say in Boston. What about in baseball? Guess what happens? Any little thing goes wrong, pitchers will settle it. You get up at bat, expect to get drilled in the ribs. And then they'll drill your guy in the ribs, and then he'll drill your guy in the ribs again, and then guess what happens? The bench is clear, and guys go at it, okay? Maybe it's not as bad as when Bill Lee had his jaw broken by Greg Nettles back in '78 or so. But you know what? That's the way sports is. And you know what? Sports is it's a multicultural, nationwide, worldwide phenomenon that the more violence there is, the better the ratings are. People watch violence. It's like when you're going up Route 1 and you want to know why the 3 lanes aren't moving. There's a car accident. Why do you think people slow down? The curiosity factor. They don't want to see two teams really nicely go at it and politely shake hands at the end. All right, they shake hands in hockey after beating each other up, which incidentally only gets you a 5-minute penalty. You can beat the snot out of each other on the ice. You can do what will get you arrested on the street, and it'll get you 5 minutes. Isn't that funny? Rondo's looking at 10 games. Ed Reed's looking at 1 game. And meanwhile, someone like Brad Marchand, if the NHL would ever play, but that's another story, he'll get 5 minutes. It's funny, isn't it? Same thing in baseball. You drill somebody, yeah, you'll get fined. You know what? It's funny how that works. But back to the real world. You know what? People love violence. And the more violent it is, the more people want to watch it, want to go to the games. You know what? It's got nothing to do with race. It's got nothing to do with ethnic background. It's got nothing to do with height, with weight. I mean, even at the horse track, occasionally guys will ride a little bit rough and you'll see jockeys fighting on the way back in. I'm not talking midget wrestling. I'm talking about 210-pound guys going at it. It's kind of funny when you think about it, but no, it's not funny. You know something? Here's the thing about sports. The violence aside, when you compare those different sports and the different players, how they go at it, let's think about this. Maybe Rondo was sticking up for his teammates. Of course, you know, Kevin Garnett is, I don't know, probably about a good half-foot taller than Rondo. I mean, he could eat peanuts off his head, use him for an end table. But the truth of the matter is, if it was the other way around, I could have said, all right, you know what? People are going to be pushing Rondo around. He's the young leader. He's the future. Guy like Garnett's going to take offense, and he's going to throw somebody 5 rows into the stands. And then comes back and says, I'm sticking up for my team. All right, you know what? I can buy that a little more. But you got to put the team first. You know, if he ends up getting 5 games off, how's that going to help the Celtics if they lose 4 out of 5 of them, even at this point in the season? You know what? It's being a man is what it really comes down to. And, you know, part of being a man is to go out there on the ice and take that beating, or to get up at bat and get drilled in the ribs for nothing that you did wrong. You're taking one because your pitcher hit someone on the other team. And that's it. You don't go fight the pitcher. You just run down the first baseline and hope that your rear end isn't hurting for too much longer. But you can't put yourself above the game either. And that's why in hockey they do shake hands at the end. Because part of it is we just left it all out there on the field. Sometimes it's going to get violent. Sometimes it's not going to get violent. Of course, hockey, unless you're playing field hockey, it's on the ice. But the truth of what I'm saying is this. There is violence in sports, and violence sells. So tune in and prepare to see it.
Welcome back. Now, if you ask people what is the strongest union in America, they might not have an answer, but I'd argue that it's the Major League Baseball Players Association. But it wasn't always that way. This week, Marvin Miller passed away at age 95. Miller grew up as an economist and worked for the National Labor Relations Board and subsequently the United Auto Workers. In 1966, he became the first director of the MLBPA. And at that point, Major League Baseball players were getting an average salary of, yes, $6,000. This was an era where you had Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Roberto Clemente, Sandy Koufax, Juan Marichal, Mickey Mantle, really, truly great players, the upper players level of the contemporary pantheon of Major League Baseball. But they weren't really represented well. Miller, over time, was able to abolish the reserve clause, and players like Catfish Hunter went from being bound by Charlie Finley and the A's to getting a 5-year, $750,000 per year contract with the New York Yankees. In 1974, Andy Messersmith and Dave McNally challenged the reserve clause, which said that the player was bound to his team for 1 year after the end of his contract. So in other words, they played the last year without a contract and subsequently were declared free agents, and the rest is history. Today, B.J. Upton of the Tampa Bay Rays, who probably didn't even know who Marvin Miller is, who had a .248 batting average last year and a .298 on base percentage, got a 5-year, $75 million contract from the Atlanta Braves. So B.J. Upton may not know who Marvin Miller is, but he should be educating himself or hiring somebody to teach him about Marvin Miller, because he certainly delivered a big payday.
Yeah, he's considered one of the 2 or 3 most important people in baseball.
Right. People have said, who are the most important figures in baseball history? And they've talked about Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson. But Marvin Miller was really transformative, and he made the Players Union successful.
You know, it's a shame, though, Ron. These, like you said, these players nowadays probably don't even know who he was. You know, $15 million a year for Upton. It's just unbelievable the way things have gone. And if you get lucky when there's no other free agents nowadays, you know, and like this year, you're going to get big money and just be an average player.
One of the geniuses of Miller was he said, in order to get the players the most amount of money, he understood that you couldn't have everyone be a free agent all the time. So when he developed the plan, 6 years where clubs had control of the players. So that way there's only a certain number of free agents every year, and by restricting the supply, they were able to drive up the salaries.
Right. And you look at a sport like hockey nowadays, so there's so many free agents out there with you know, them not playing. What's going to happen to them when they finally come to agreement? It's just that's going to be a tough situation there.
Now, it's been a big week for performance-enhancing drugs. First of all, Jermaine Cunningham of the Patriots was suspended. They're trying to get us to believe that it was Adderall, but you know, I'm not sure that I'm buying that one.
Well, they don't announce what it is.
No,
the
they don't.
Players are all coming out and saying it's Adderall.
Right, but the relevant issue currently is Hall of Fame voting. Now, a couple of players, I guess Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, are in a situation where they're achieving eligibility, and the argument is, well, I think there's two arguments to be made. You can say is the sport was really dirty in the era they played, so everyone should be judged on their performance, assuming everyone cheated. Or you can say, well, we're not going to let anybody in because everybody cheated. Or you can say, well, nobody's getting in on the first ballot because those are the guys that cheated.
The way I would look at it if I was voting, Roger Clemens, I believe, went on the steroids when he became a free agent and went to Toronto. You know, that's when I think he was on it because his whole body type changed. And, you know, when we was on the Red Sox, I guess the 2 or 3 preceding years, he didn't have the greatest stats.
I think 40 games in 4 years.
But he was a Hall of Famer before he went on it. Same thing with Barry Bonds. The reason why Barry Bonds went on it is because of Sosa and McGuire. They were getting all the recognition, you know, over him, and he decided to go on it. But he went on it right after they went on it. I think a year or two after. His whole body type changed. So the way I would look at it, Bonds was a Hall of Famer before he went on it. Clemens was a Hall of Famer before he went on it. I'd probably vote them in. And who else? I mean, there's so many players that are on it that we don't even know. You know Ortiz and Ramirez were on it.
Well, I looked at this years ago, the peak home run production versus the first 5 years of their career. For example, the first five full seasons of his career, Hank Aaron, I think, had 32 home runs a year. I think he hit in the mid-40s. So in other words, he was about 50% higher than his first 5 years. He got to be a better player, more experienced. He improved some. Now, Rafael Palmeiro's first 5 seasons, he averaged 15 home runs a year. And then he had twice, I think, 47. You can't go from 15 to 47. Nobody's good enough. It's like saying a guy averaged 10 points a year from the NBA for 5 years, and then he averages 30.
How about Brady Anderson?
Brady Anderson hits 50 home runs. You know, you just can't improve that much.
But Sosa's the guy. Sosa and McGuire, but more Sosa. I mean, he doubled his weight, it looked like. I mean, he was just drilling balls.
Right. You know, and I mean,
it was unbelievable.
I guess I'm in the belief that I'm going to let people in if I thought that their career, even without the performance-enhancing drug, got them to Hall of Fame standards. Now, I think, look at Jim Rice. He got in probably more because he didn't use steroids, as far as we know, rather than on, you know, extreme ability. I mean, he certainly
was the best hitter in baseball for 6 straight years.
Right. He was an outstanding player for a long time. Was it long enough? I guess it was long enough. But, you know, if you say, where's it going now? We have a couple of young players like Bryce Harper and Mike Trout who are fantastic players, had incredible years. They're 20 and 19 years old. What's their upside? You know, who knows? And we have astronomical television contracts coming. The Dodgers, I think, are going to have $240 million a year, so they'll probably have another, you know.
That's why they made that deal with the Red Sox.
Right.
You know, let's get some talent in here.
Right.
We have this big contract.
You know, but if you think about, my son wrote an article in The Atlantic Online saying, when do we get our first billion-dollar ball player? And I think at one point, might have been Hamilton, was making 19% of the Texas Rangers payroll. Well, if the Dodgers payroll goes up to $500 million someday, which it might, then you have a guy, will they sign Trout or Harper in their mid-20s to a billion-dollar contract? I mean, you know, $90 million a year for 12 years or something. It sounds crazy, but sports can be crazy.
30 million sound crazy a few years ago, and look at A-Rod, one of the worst third basemen in baseball. That's 5 more years left, making $30 million a year, $150 million.
Well, you have to wonder the last few years of Pujols' contract, what's that going to look like? You know, and today Larry Lucchino was on, I didn't really see the whole interview, but you know, he was kind of saying, well, you have to be patient with us. Sure, we may not have our payroll at the same level it was last year. Well, wait a minute here. If the payroll goes from 175 to 125, I'm not hearing anything about rolling back ticket prices.
Well, that's the whole thing. The whole Red Sox situations, and I mean, they're in a terrible situation. They made the deal last year. Everybody was excited. When they signed them, everybody was excited. I told you, Red Sox fans, they're not the sharpest in the world, Ron. I'm telling you. They just go with the flow. Whatever the right is right. I mean, again, they thought it was a great deal, getting Gonzalez, paying him $23 million, getting Crawford, paying him $20 million.
Well, they did a great job unloading these guys.
Yeah, but they didn't really do a great job unloading them now. I mean, you're unloading those guys, but Crawford healthy with Gonzalez, you're not going to get another Gonzalez on that team. And now What are you going to do with this $23 million? Who are you going to sign that's a free agent this year?
Oh, the only
Where
guy.
are you going to use that $23 million?
The only guy out there is Hamilton, and Hamilton's got his own flaws.
And everybody's knocking the Dodgers run. They have all this money to spend. All this money to spend. Why not get a Gonzalez now? Why not get a Crawford?
No, I don't blame the. They've developed a business plan. They have a big stadium. They can draw over 3 million fans. They do, and I just didn't know that there was that kind of demand for television in L.A.
But the thing that makes you laugh, Ron, these people, these fans, Red Sox fans, they're excited here when they sign. They're excited when they let them go. With all this money they have, where's the talent out there to sign?
I'm not excited.
Now they don't want them to sign Hamilton because they think he's going to be too much. Well, who are they going to sign?
Well, there's all
Swisher?
Lucchino said, well, David Ross is a heck of a defensive catcher. Okay, so you have signing a 35, 36-year-old guy.
Napoli hit 240 this year. He's not bad, but
Napoli's
240.
kind of on the way down. They have no first baseman. They have no shortstop. They have no corner outfielders. I mean, Johnny Gomes is a success story for Johnny Gomes, but most people never heard of Johnny Gomes.
And then the Red Sox, right? Lucchino and them, they know Ortiz is on PD. They know he's taking something. So their thinking is, and everybody says, like a lot of these talk shows, they shouldn't give him a 2-year contract, right? But they know he's going to be on it. So they know in the 2 years he's still going to have the numbers because he's on it. If he had to go, if they really tested, and he had to go off it, he'd be missing those fastballs like he did 2 years ago. He'd be so far behind them, he'd be doing nothing. You know what happened.
Well,
when he was named as one of the players that were on performance-enhancing drugs, when he was named, he went off it for a while. You could see. He couldn't get it. His swing he was so far behind those fastballs. Then all of a sudden now he's ahead of the fastball because he lost 20 pounds.
Well, baseball's a funny game. The Tigers against the Yankees, it looked like way to go is get big fat guys. Prince Fielder, Miguel Cabrera. And then against the Giants, they just didn't show up, and the Giants win 2 times out of 3. And most of us can't name 5 people on the Giants.
Well, the Yankees are the biggest joke. I'm a Yankee fan all these years. They're the biggest. This team is the biggest joke in the history of sports. Forget the Red Sox being a joke. These Yankees I told you. You laughed at me when I told you.
You were right.
No player in that team is a clutch player. You love Cano. He's not clutch. He doesn't. I told you, he hits a home run when they're up. He'll hit a 3-run homer. But when they're down 2 runs with 2 men on, he'll pop out a strikeout.
Well, people are talking about Swisher, and we've talked about that before. Swisher is not a clutch player.
2 for 38 in the playoffs with men in scoring position.
Right. So why do we want Swisher? I understand. For the players, if I'm Swisher, I'm saying, oh, Boston. I love Boston. Boston's the greatest. They have wonderful seafood. The fans are terrific. Show me the money.
But the thing with the perfect place to play is at Fenway Park. A right-handed power hitter, but he's a switch hitter.
Right.
So but he still has the wall there. He's kind of like a pull hitter when he's swinging from the left side. But a right-handed hitter, anybody should sign with the Red Sox. You want to get a good contract? Go play in Fenway Park for 1 year, like Cody Ross did.
Well, here's an example. Evan Longoria just signed a 6-year extension for $100 million for Tampa. Now, he already has 3 or 4 more years on his existing contract. Now, Longoria is an outstanding defensive player. He's a very excellent hitter when he's healthy.
He's been hurt a lot.
But he's another guy. The Red Sox had a player years ago, Tim Naring. He was just a good all-around player, fun guy, played hard. He just couldn't stay on the field. And you wonder, are you going to make a commitment that's guaranteed money for a long term? If he gets hurt, if he hurts his knee or his shoulder or whatever, he's always got something hurt.
Yeah, the Red Sox, it looks like the Red Sox are done. Them and the Yankees are done for years to come.
Well, the Red Sox, you have to figure them probably for last place in the division right now.
All that money totally screwed up both teams. Really, people should just look at the Red Sox and Yankees. I mean, the thing that bailed out the Red Sox was Ramirez and Ortiz, both on the drugs. That's what bailed. They won 2 championships because of that. And Pedro Martinez, another guy that was on it.
Well, look at Oakland. They had Reddick, Brandon Moss, Coco Crisp, Red Sox castaways. Oakland made the playoffs, and actually, they beat out California.
Yeah.
With the high price. So, maybe you should be spending your money on the general manager, Billy Beane, instead of on
Cashman and Theo.
Yeah,
I mean,
Charrington. Well, it's not
Theo-
Charrington. It's Lucchino who's
Yeah, but
pulling the strings.
Theo screwed up the whole franchise. He really did with all those moves. I mean, he totally screwed him up. When he could have kept Beltray and Vemont, and everybody laughed because Vemont got hurt. When they had a right-handed power hitter at third base, and Beltray. Thank God they have.
Well, and they were interviewing Kurt Schilling, who said he'd never vote for Clemens or Barry Bonds. Well, I mean, I guess the separate issue is, did Schilling defraud the state of Rhode Island? Is that $100 million loss for them disqualifying?
Well, a lot of people feel that he's a bull artist. He's always been Schilling. I wonder what he actually did have on his sock. But that aside.
Well, as they say about baseball, it's such a great game that the idiots that run it can't destroy it. We'll be right back.
At Athletic Evolution, it starts with a purpose and ends with your success. Visit our website or drop into our training facility at 78B Olympia Avenue, Woburn, Mass. Athletic Evolution, giving you the edge.
Thanks for sticking around. We want to talk a little bit about the Patriots and which opponents worry us most down the stretch as the Patriots seek to get back to the Super Bowl. Now, there's different arguments. People argue about Houston. They have the best record. Well, they've given up about 500 points in the last 2 weeks and won on Thanksgiving because bizarre officiating rule. You have Denver, which has the guy in the hockey mask, Jason Voorhees, as the quarterback, Peyton Manning. You just can't get rid of the guy. He's always coming back. And then, of course, the team I personally worry about the most, Baltimore.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Denver and Baltimore. Those are the two teams that I think the Pats can handle anyone else. I think if they play Denver at home, they'll have a big advantage. And Baltimore, looks like they may be playing if they play Baltimore, they may be playing Baltimore at Baltimore. But it's all going to come down to how they play. How's the defense playing at the end of the year? Is Gronkowski going to be healthy? I mean, they can beat anybody, the Patriots. If they have a good day, they'll win. If they have a bad day, Brady can't come through at the end of games, and get that big first down they need.
Well, when they beat Baltimore last year, Baltimore, they blew it so many times. Ball ripped out of the receiver's hands in the end zone. Chip shot field goal goes wide. And Brady had a couple of interceptions, didn't really play well. And Flacco he's more than a manager. He's a good quarterback.
But all you want as a fan, Ron, you want a chance. You want a team that has a chance to do it. The Patriots definitely have a chance to do it. Last year they improved. The defense got better and better as the year went on. To me, they played their best game against the Giants in the Super Bowl, and things just didn't go right in that. They stripped the ball 3 times from the Giants. Not once they came up with they had 12 men on the field. So the 3 times they stripped the ball, the Giants got it back twice, and there was a penalty against the Patriots. Welker's drop. I mean, I thought they played the perfect. Everybody picked the Giants to beat them.
Well, the secondary looks better. Dennard, he's not perfect, but at least he's in the vicinity of the receivers. And Talib, he's still playing himself back into shape, but it doesn't look like it's easy to beat those guys. And McCourty looks better as a safety. They play him back in the cover, too. He can get to the edge of the field.
Chung's going to be the key. Chung's the smartest defensive back they have.
But he's always hurt.
He's always hurt because he's the biggest hitter. Every hit, he comes up and crunches you. He hits hard. And he usually screws up his shoulder or something, his back or whatever. But, he played pretty good last week. And if he's healthy, he's going to add on to that team with Gregory, too. Back there, I mean.
The indispensable player, some people might laugh, on the defense is Spikes. Spikes just brings an attitude. He forces fumbles. He hits people.
And they're looking for him. Don't doubt it. Those running backs are looking for him. That's for sure.
Right. He's really laid the wood on a lot of players this year. I mean, he's got some fines. Some of the fines were, I'm sure, well deserved. There are a couple on quarterback hits that I thought he hit him in the chest, and
There was one game where he went up against a team that had a running back, that real tough running back, about 260 pounds. And that's all they were talking about that week. He was going to give the Patriots trouble once he got going. Early on in the game, he went through the middle, and Spikes met him about a yard past the line of scrimmage and decked him. And you didn't hear from him the rest of the game.
Well, in the last game on Thanksgiving against the Jets, it was a 3rd and 3, I think, on the 3-yard line. And Sanchez tried to run a quarterback draw. Spikes kind of came out of nowhere and flattened him. And then they tried to run it up the middle on 4th down, too, and somehow he got to the bottom of that pile, too.
Yeah, I want to see Hightower do a little more, though, Ron.
Yeah, he's been hurt a bit. I'm not really sure what to think of him. He's pretty fast. I'm a little concerned about him covering tight ends in coverage, that's all.
Who's going to now, with Cunningham suspended for 4 games, and they say Jones isn't playing.
Well, I guess Trevor Scott has to step up and do something.
And maybe Francis at times.
Yeah. Right, the kid from Rutgers. Beckett, I don't think anybody, or Beckett, he's nothing so far.
It seems like every time a real good player gets, like Mankins, when he goes down, they have the highest scoring games.
Well, they've had
Vollmer was down
They've
last
had
game.
Mankins, Vollmer, and Connolly, 3 outstanding linemen out, and they still put up 49 points, including defensive points.
But no, it was amazing against the Jets. Vollmer's out. Cannon's playing right tackle. You didn't hear from him the whole game. I don't think he got beat once.
Cannon's a big fellow.
But Vollmer's the best line. I think Vollmer's more valuable to the team than Mankins.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with Mankins. Obviously, he's got a lot of guaranteed money, but it looks like health-wise he's on the downhill slide.
Well, the knee, he played with that bad knee last year and the hip and the knee this year. But it's been amazing. They've had 3 games he's been out, and I think they've scored over 40 points all 3 games.
Right. Well, the Celtics, what can you say about them? Right now, Doc Rivers summarized it. He said, we're not a very good team right now.
They're not tough enough, Ron. I mean, they have Garnett as your toughest player. I mean, Sullinger's, he's just not big and strong enough to battle with the big guys and the other teams. He's not an intimidator. And when Garnett's out of the game, it's unbelievable. The defense just falls apart.
Rivers used the S word, which is the dreaded S word in the NBA. That's soft. So you got guys like Jeff Green. He's really a finesse player. And he doesn't mean he can't get a little bit of a mean streak, but so far he hasn't shown it.
And what do you think about Rondo last night?
What can you say?
Did you see it?
No, I didn't see it.
Here's what happened, Ron. In the play, Garnett gets hit by, what's his name?
Humphreys.
So Humphreys comes down hard in the back, but not as bad as McHale against the Lakers.
Against Rambus.
Against Rambus. Nowhere as bad as that. So Rondo originally just went up to him and gave him like a little nudge. But then Humphreys retaliated in the way, kind of grabbed him. So then Rondo had to get aggressive with him, and Rondo just drove him right into the stands, under the basket. But that's why Rondo only got suspended for 2 games. Everybody thought it could be between 5 and 10 because of last year with the refs. But when you really look at it, you hear the talk shows that saying, Rondo's a punk and this and that. He didn't go up to him with the intent of decking him or throwing him in the stands. He went up to him and would say, hey, you don't do that to one of my teammates. And he gave him a little nudge. But then he got stuck. Again, Humphreys kind of grabbed him. He grabbed him back, and Rondo didn't want to get decked, so he just pushed him forward, and that's the way it ended up. They were in the stands.
Well, this is not the first time it ever happened in basketball. Obviously everyone remembers the Kermit Washington, Rudy Tomjanovich. They wrote a book about it. They called it The Punch. That was
a shame.
That was pretty much ended 2 guys' careers.
That was bad.
But, I can tell you, I was in high school playing against North Andover in a preseason game that meant nothing. Now, one of the most celebrated coaches in Massachusetts is a guy named Dickie LeCarry. Well, Dickie LeCarry was a guard in North Andover and threw a punch at me at that game. And it didn't break out into a fight because I wasn't really a fighter, and he missed. But it was one of those things. So he was, in my opinion, he was a punk then. Hopefully he outgrew that. But, in physical games, people get excited. You know, they do stupid things.
You know the thing too, Ron, remember how Rondo's one player I just can't figure out? Sometimes I think he's real good, and sometimes I think he's not so good. I think the problem with the Celtics, one of the problems with the Celtics this year, he's too much into the assist thing. He's pounding the ball on the floor, you know, and
well, the consecutive game streak is over.
But you know what I was doing? You know, I was talking to my son about Rondo the other day. He doesn't like Rondo, and he played point guard, you know. And he goes, I don't like Rondo. He says, people think that a point guard, it's all about assists. And he goes, it isn't. He goes, I saw a play. He had Terry in the corner, wide open, but Terry was 2 passes away from Rondo. Lee was right in the middle of the court. A good point guard would have kicked the ball to Lee. Lee would have kicked it to Terry for the wide open shot. But Rondo is so much into the assists, he pounds the ball till someone comes open. Well, that's not good. You gotta move the defense. You can't just set picks away from the ball constantly and wait for guys to come open. You got to move the ball, make the defense move, cut, make quick passes. Let someone else get the assist once in a while. If Rondo's getting all the assists, then no one else is doing anything.
Right, and well, that brings me to a point. I wanted to make basketball coaching points. It's probably generic coaching points. I think there's 2 things that you have to do to be a successful coach. You have to be able to teach the game. You know, you have to, because the players, most of the players have outstanding talent. The worst player in the league, you know, Henry Finkel was an All-American at Akron and averaged 27 points a game, and he was, you know, a backup player in the NBA. That, you know, you can be a great player in college, doesn't mean you're going to be a star in the NBA. But you have to teach the players the game, and you have to be able to get the players to play hard for you. And a guy like Rivers, he, you know, even though he was a bit negative, they'll play hard for him. And if
because he's honest with them.
And that's the point we make to our younger players. You know, you can't take plays off. The great players are not taking plays off. Every trip down the floor, they're trying to make something happen. Every time on defense, they're trying to make something happen. And it's really hard as a young player to understand that and to be able to bring that kind of energy. And as a coach, it's hard to get your players to understand that. The great players, they get it.
Well, that's the toughest job for a coach like us. You know, we tell our team, you know, that's one thing I really feel uneasy about, you know, is really making them into ball players, because they got to make themselves, I mean, they can dribble the ball great. They can be great shooters. They can even play great defense. But if they're not totally locked in the game mentally, they're never going to be a real good ball player. We talk about anticipating. You know, the only way you can anticipate is to be totally locked in the game. And like Larry Bird was so great as an athlete because he was always 2 steps ahead of everything. He knew what was going to be happening before it happened. And people say, well, how can he know that? You could. If you're totally locked in the game, and if you're totally concentrating, you can see that there's a potential, good potential, that this point guard pushing the ball up is going to be looking to the wing because that play is now open if you see the floor properly.
Well, and, you know, I'll give you an example. I won't name the game probably because I'll have trouble remembering it, but it was the end of a game last year, close game, final seconds, Melrose with the ball. They try to run the play from, you know, the sideline down the half court. You just can't run your offense from the sideline at the end of the game. The players away from the ball sag into the middle of the foul line. You end up playing 5-on-4, 5-on-3. You can't make that happen. But that's, whose fault is that? The players have to understand that. You have to emphasize that as a coach. We cannot run our offense from the sideline, you know, in a key moment. Do our players understand that? I don't know. We'll find out.
I made a statement the other day talking to our kids. I said, how many of you on the way to a game are thinking about the game, what you're going to do in certain situations? The ones who do think about it are going to be ball players. You're considered a ball player. The ones that don't think about it, talking about something else, joking about something else, you're never going to be the ball player you should be. Because if you're not totally ready to play that game, prepared, then you're not the type of ball player that, you know, you need to be. The great ball players are so well prepared mentally going into a game that they know they can react so quickly because they understand they're prepared for these different situations. And the problem is you get some kids, and you get it all the time, you see them in the game, and they know there's a teammate that's going to be in the left there because we're breaking down a press, and they don't even look there. They're totally not locked, you know, they're not locked in the game.
Well, people have always talked about having the will to win. I think it was Bobby Knight who said it's not having the will to win, it's having the will to prepare. Because preparation is ultimately the key. Preparation, practice, focus, whatever. Teams that don't practice well seldom play well. And, you know, and coaches can be responsible too because they have to have a plan. You know, and we'll see how it goes. You know, we don't know too much about what the winter sports scene is going to bring in Melrose. We'd like to see the basketball teams be successful because those are the teams we know best. I understand there's a new hockey coach this season. Hopefully that's going to work out for them. And, you know, track's been pretty good lately, so we'd expect the indoor season to go well.
I think the boys' basketball team's going to be strong. I hear Franzi Perot's back. I'm hoping he is back. Someone told me he is back. I know Gillis is back. I talked to Gillis
so
at one of the volleyball matches. He can play. You know, you have Hirschfeld back. That's three of the top players in the league back.
Sherlock.
Sherlock. I called him Hirschfeld last year in the game. But Sherlock back. And I think with Adams gone, you can now see Sherlock's talent.
Well, you probably see better ball movement. You know, Adams was an outstanding player. You know, not always the most focused player, but he had a lot of ability. I don't know where he wound up, but you know, Melrose is going to miss him because he was a great scorer.
Yeah, and again, they're going to be very successful with those three players back, and hopefully they have a couple younger players that help out. The girls, I feel, could be the second top strong team in the league because you got Reading, who's real strong. They have two of the top players in the league back. They're going to be one of the top teams in Division 2.
I mean, Reading was an undefeated state champion, and they bring back their key players. So you'd have to, you know, they're the favorite to win Division 2.
But next to them, it's Melrose, Watertown, and Wilmington. You know.
Right. So there's.
Brooke Bell should lead this Melrose team. Should be one of the best players in the league at point guard.
Yeah, the big question for the Melrose girls this winter is going to be who's going to get the ball on the boards. So they're going to have to make a strong commitment to block out and rebound because they don't have great size.
I think your pal Kayla Wineland's going to be a star this year.
I think Kayla's going to have a good season.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining us. I'm Ron Sen.
And I'm Ralph LaBella, and thank you for watching Let's Talk Sports.